Hi, my name is Tomantos, and today I'm going to show you what you should keep in mind when blocking a simple dialogue scene. The things you should avoid and aim for when deciding on framing, angles, and lens choices. Here's a simple scene where two people are having a conversation. The simplest and most common way to film a scene like this is with three camera angles. A wide shot that frames both of our subjects, and then two over-the-shoulder shots that move in a bit closer for each of the subjects. Now, as simple as this three camera setup is, I still very often see people make the most basic of mistakes when setting it up. And it's all because they either never learned the fundamentals of good cinematography or because they forget it the second they're on location. It's real good to know the theory, but if you don't ever remind yourself to apply it when actually setting up your shots, then it's useless. Some of the things I see people forget the most is the rule of thirds. If you don't know it, then let me quickly explain it. Rule of thirds is simply dividing the screen into three equal parts, vertically and horizontally, and then using those lines when framing your shots. What that means is that you should frame your subjects on those lines or in one of the third portions of the screen to avoid putting things dead center. Like if you have a very clearly visible horizon line, instead of putting the horizon dead center, it's best to tilt up or down to have the horizon fall on one of the lines. This just makes the shot balanced a lot better. Same if you're framing a person. If you put the subject's head in the middle, like most people do when taking a vacation photo, then you get this. But if you quickly pan to place the subject on one of the lines and then tilt to have their head fall on the other line, then right away you get a well-balanced shot. Again, just because it's called a rule of thirds doesn't mean it's an actual rule that you always have to follow. There's many exceptions where, for example, this doesn't apply. Like if you're trying to show the importance of your subject and stress the fact that they are actually the center of attention, in which case you would frame them in the middle like you see here. This is a shot from a music video I did where I wanted to switch the viewer's attention from the first girl with the umbrella to the homeless girl. But even here you see that I keep her head on the top line, because if I were to keep it completely dead center, then we'd end up with a lot of empty and pointless space above her head. Going back to our scene with the two girls talking, a lot of people make mistake by framing both subjects dead center in over-the-shoulder shots like these. The reason why this doesn't work is because you end up with seeing the back of the head of one of your subjects. In this type of a shot, it's better to give 2/3 of the shot to the main subject by moving the camera over a bit and then framing the less important subject in only 1/3 of the frame. And also to pan down so the subject's eyes fall on the top line. This way we eliminate the empty space above their head. We do the same thing in the other angle. As you can see, it's a small difference, but it makes the shots look a lot more balanced. Another thing to know before you attempt to set up a scene is what effects you get with different types of lenses. Like how depth of field or perspective is affected when using long telephoto lenses versus wide-angle lenses. You can learn more about that by watching my previous tutorial. In short though, long lenses such as this 100mm I'm using here has a tendency to make your shots look compressed. Things that are in the background seem larger or closer when compared to your subject, and it's also easy to hide the surroundings with a long lens since you're only showing a small portion of the background. That way you can make the shots be more about your subjects and not where they actually are. As opposed to wide-angle lenses such as this 35mm I'm using here. You right away get a sense of where the scene is taking place. The framing of the subjects doesn't change here. We still see the girls full frame in both versions, but the perspective changes, and along with it the mood of the shot. Also, when we use the long lenses in the close-up over the shoulder shots, it tends to make the two girls look like they're a lot closer to each other. It makes them feel more intimate since all we really see are the girls. But if we were to again use the 35mm lens, then the shot looks a lot more relaxed and natural, since the 35mm lens on a 35mm image sensor more or less matches the perspective of human eye, which is not the case when shooting with a long lens. So as you can see, lens choices can drastically affect the mood of your shots. But unfortunately, a lot of the times I see people make mistakes where they switch from one angle to the other angle where they use completely different lenses, and because of that they suddenly change the mood of the scene. Most of the time they're unaware of that, so they'll just keep on cutting back and forth from one angle that is shot using a long lens to another angle that's shot on a much wider lens, which makes the editing and lens choices that much more obvious, because they're in fact constantly changing the way that the scene feels. So next time you're filming, if you decide to go for a more relaxed feeling to your scene, then choose a lens that looks that way, and then stick with it as you change the angles. You can always reframe your shots from wide shots to a close-up by moving your camera closer to the subject. It doesn't mean that you can't change the lenses from shot to shot either, but just try to keep them similar. A 35mm lens in one angle and a 50mm lens, for example, in another is a small difference and doesn't really change the mood that much. But 35mm to 100mm is just drastically different. Another thing to keep in mind when framing your shots is to make sure your shots are different enough from each other so that later on, when you edit the scene, you don't end up with a jump cut. Jump cuts occur when you edit two different shots that are actually too similar to each other and end up creating a noticeable jump from one shot to the other. Something that you want to avoid in most situations, like you see here. I cut from a shot of the two girls to a single shot which looks just too similar. I only moved the camera a few feet closer and kept the same lens. But if I were to move in even closer to the girl, creating a noticeably different framing, then the cut works a lot better. Same thing goes if you want to change the angle and not the framing. Make sure you move your camera to a noticeably different angle so that the two angles cut well together later on in editing. So in short, next time you're setting up your scene, remember to pay close attention to the framing. Using the rule of thirds is a good guide. Also remember to keep your lens choices consistent so your scene doesn't drastically change the mood from one angle to the other. And finally, remember to make each shot, whether it's the angle or the framing, different enough from the other shots so you avoid the jump cuts later on when you put the scene together in editing. That's it. Hope this helps you next time you're out there filming, and good luck.